Let's look at some fake dealing. Now in your toolbox, it's useful to have various obscure sleights because you never know when you might need them. The push-off second deal is a sleight I adore. It's useful for forcing cards, for doing gambling demonstrations and so on. So let's add it into your toolbox right now, why don't we? Let's say we have the ace of clubs on top of the deck. And let's say just for a moment we're going to force that ace of clubs. I would deal cards down and ask you to say stop whenever you like. You say stop, and you've stopped right at the ace of clubs. So how do we do this? It's the push-off second deal. You see, I'm not dealing the top card each time. I'm actually dealing the second card down each time. With the card face down, it looks exactly as though you're dealing the top card each time, but you're not. You're dealing the second card each time. Now this is a long learning curve, but it's a great one to pick up. Let's look at it in a little bit of detail. The deck is held in a very loose grip in the left hand, beveled over to the right. The left thumb is on the deck, and you see how I think this is called the phalange of the thumb. I call it the fatty bit of the thumb. In other words, the joint of the thumb is on the edge of the deck. Now, half the action is this. The thumb is going to start pushing over, and the fat part of the thumb is going to hit the second card and start pushing that over. The fingers underneath are going to stop any more cards coming over. So if you feel a third card coming over, you can squeeze it back in. So it starts to push, push, and now you push all the way across. This is pushing out two cards as one. The more you do this, the tighter they'll get. That's half the action. Now the other half of the action is that the right hand is going to come in and the right thumb is going to scoot, almost slide across this top card as if it was going to deal it. So it's going to scoot across, just as so. Now the moment the right thumb hits the right first finger, which is just covering the cards here, the right second finger is underneath. The moment it hits, the left thumb is going to pull back that card and the right hand is going to deal the card. So put the two hands together, two cards are pushed, the right thumb scoots across, and the left thumb pulls back. And you put it all together with about 18 months or so of practice, and it starts looking really, really, really pretty. And that's the push-off second deal, a somewhat tenuous, devastating, and nail-biting experience into your toolbox. Having spent ages learning your second dealing, you're going to want to learn how to deal studs as well, of course, for your gambling demonstrations. Luckily for you, if you've got the left-hand action down, it's just an adjustment of the right-hand action. So we have the ace of clubs on top of the deck, and we want to deal some studs, just as so. Let's look at this action. Oh, by the way, the ace of clubs still is on top, just in case you thought I'd sneaked it away. So we're doing exactly the same left-hand action of pushing off those two cards, exaggerated for clarity here. As the right hand comes over, the fingers come over the top of the two cards, the thumb comes underneath, and now the left thumb pulls back as the right hand turns over. So it's under, pull, and over, just as so. This is one of the most convincing second deals I've ever come across. It looks beautiful to keep that ace, in this case, on top of the deck. And that's the stud push-off second deal. Let's add something else to your second deal repertoire, a one-handed second deal. You may have your arm around a beautiful lady or your hand around a drink. So you still need to second deal. Let's add in that one-handed second deal. There's the ace of clubs. Let's do a little deal and another little deal and keep that ace of clubs on top. I'm not kidding. We're doing one-handed second deals here. Here's how you do it. You're doing exactly the same action as you did before. Your left hand is pushing off the two cards. As you reach in, you're twisting your left hand in to spin out, to throw the card. Your left thumb pulls back, and simple momentum will take that card out, inertia, if you will. So it's pull in, go out. Pull in, go out, pull in, go out. What's lovely about this is with the card face down, it looks just as though you're dealing cards from the top of the deck. However, sneaky little you have been doing a one-handed second deal from your toolbox. So let's look at this in a little more detail. As you can see, the deck is being held in what is commonly termed the mechanic's grip. It's actually just a traditional way to hold a deck of cards by most dealers. As the left hand turns in, it's going to turn towards you and push off two cards as one as the turning action happens. So there's the two cards as one coming in. As I'm going to spin out, the left thumb is going to pull back, and inertia is going to take this card spinning across the table. The other fingers are just holding on to the rest of the deck so that they don't go flying across the table. So we come in and deal. Come in and deal. Come in and deal. And that's all there is to it. Push two, pull back, throw out. And there's a one-handed second deal in a little second deal-y detail. Okay, having learnt second dealing and stud second dealing and one-handed second dealing, what more could be left? Well, let's learn a little one-handed stud second dealing. So we have the ace of clubs on top of the deck, and let's just do a little deal there. That's the 5, there's the jack, there's the 4, there's the 9, and the ace of clubs is still on top of the deck. This is a great way to force a card, by the way. It's just to deal through them until they say stop. So how do you do the little one-handed stud second? It's very simple if you've learnt this push-off action of two cards. What you do is as your hand turns, you're going to push off two cards. That's as your hand is turning. So two cards as the hand turns. As the hand reaches the exact moment of its stopping point, you push back that top card. So just pull it back with your left thumb, just as so. So as the hand turns, you're pushing two, pull one back, drop the card. So now you can do stud one-handed seconds all the way through, well, the deck. That would be good, because when you run out of cards, there's only going to be the ace of clubs left, and you can go, hello, little buddy, nice to see you. So with the ace face up, it would look a little like this. As the hand turns, you're pushing two cards. As it turns over, you're pulling the ace back, and then letting the card below it go. So pushing two, card below it goes. And then just make it a smooth little action, keeping that ace on top of the deck. Another very useful tool for the magician is the bottom deal. I'll just show it to you as a very simple example of a gambling little routine here. You know, we have an entire crew in this studio. It's not just me. They're just being very, very quiet. They're like little hamsters in the background. But let's pretend I'd asked one of those to name a number of hands, and let's say they said 4 or 5 hands. And let's say they chose hand number 3 to win. So let me deal out 5 hands. And they've asked for hand number 3 to win. And that hand would have a pair of aces in it. Now that's pretty neat. What is it? It's base dealing or subway dealing, which is also called by magicians bottom dealing. Leaving the cards face up, it looks a little like this. Just so you can see it exactly, let's give them another little shuffleette. So as I deal out the cards, into the third hand, I bottom deal from the deck. So how do you bottom deal? Let's leave those 2 aces face up on the bottom of the deck just for now. Here's your grip. The deck is beveled a little over to the right. The first finger, it's not like a mechanic's grip. It's not over the front of the deck. It's more curled around the edge of the deck here. And it's backed into the base of the thumb. Now notice also as a bonus for you in a moment that bevels down some of the bottom cards of the deck. That's going to come in really handy for you. So there's your grip, just like so. This is going to be a very important point for you. This is just like the phalange at the top of the second finger. You don't want to use the tip of the finger. You're going to get a big finger flutter otherwise. What's going to happen is the phalange of that finger is going to press against the card and squeeze it out slightly, just as so. Let me show you again. It's going to squeeze against that card and push outwards, just like that. Now we're going to split the deal into 2 halves, and that's what makes this a very deceptive deal. When I deal the first card of the hand, that's when I'm going to do that little push. That little phalange action is just going to take that card out just enough. So it's just sticking out maybe a 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to deal 1 card. Now this card is set. 2 cards. Let's say I need to deal to the third hand as I come in. That's when I straighten my left fingers and I miss the deck. This could almost be called miss the deck bottom deal. 5, 6. As I deal the first card again, now I've reset my little moment. 2, miss the deck. 4, 5. Let's do it one more time for you. The bottom deal is a very useful little artifact to have in your system. So there's the 2 aces. So let's say we want to deal them third out of 4 hands. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's just a matter of timing it all down and making your fingers bleed yet again, my friends. But it's another great tool to have in your toolbox. Having gone through our second deals, of course, you'll know that we need to do stud bottom deals. Let's go for a blackjack here. I think I'll just say stop right there. That's the jack of clubs. This is very, very similar to the bottom dealing action we used before. Luckily for me, I have the other blackjack on the bottom ready to explain. Once again, you're going to flex those cards just as you did before so that you can use the phalange of the second finger to squeeze that card around the edge of the deck. And that's all going to happen as you deal the first card. So the deck is gripped. Now, as I deal this card, which gives a load of cover, as you can see, let me take my hand away, that's when I do the squeeze. That's when this card is turning. So that's 1, 2, 3. Now when I want the card I want, perhaps it's a force card or whatever, as my hands come in again, fingers over the top, the left fingers straighten, thumb goes underneath, fingers on top, and I just turn that bottom card face up. So at speed, it looks exactly as though the card comes from the top of the deck, but it's actually come from the bottom of the deck. Oops. So now you can one-hand second deal, you can stud deal, but can you one-hand bottom deal? Let's have a look at a one-hand bottom deal used for a force. I would deal the cards down, one-handed, and ask somebody to call stop whenever they like. They call stop, there's my force card, the ace of diamonds. Okay, you don't have to believe me that that was my force card, but I'll show you exactly how I did it. If you've learnt the bottom deal, you've pretty much learnt this one. It's just all about straightening your fingers and turning your hand at the same time. So as we deal off our first card, that's when we do our normal little phalange of the second finger curling round the bottom card. Now we've got our bottom deal set. So we deal, 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 deal. They say stop. As they say stop, this hand is going to turn over. As it turns over, your left fingers straighten out and drop that card onto the table. So at speed, for your little toolbox here, my friends, it's just say stop whenever you like. They say stop. You've stopped at the ace of diamonds. What's fascinating about using this as a force, and various people have used this in various ways, to have a different colored back or a message on the card, is because this card was on the bottom of the deck, it can actually be an odd-backed card, or it could have a message on the card saying, I knew you'd stop here. You see, because it's coming off the bottom of the deck, they never actually see the back of that card. So not only is it a great force, it's a great way to force a card that's got some sneaky message or different colored back on it. So that's how you do one-handed bottom dealing, along with a couple of little sneaky uses for it, my friends. So here's what it would look like if you were doing it with a kind of weird force card. So you would say stop sometime. They say stop. They stop at the ace of spades. You would spread out your deck. It's a red back deck, and yet they've managed to stop you by sheer lunacy at the only blue-backed card in the deck. Now that's spooky. Occasionally when you're going to do the gambly kind of moves, you're going to be asked about center dealing. Could somebody really deal from the center of the deck? Well, yeah, you can, but it's a lot of learning curve. I'm going to teach you a way to bluff a center deal. Let's use the ace of clubs, and let's put it right here in the center of the deck. I'd ask you how many hands you want. Let's say you said 5. I'd ask you which one you want the ace in. Let's say you said 4, so I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's the ace of clubs, directly from the center of the deck, exactly where you said. So how do you do it? Is it really a center deal? Yeah, it is. The card's coming out of the center, but you're kind of bluffing it. So the card goes into the center, take a break on it, a little break. As you're squaring up the cards, just tilt it out just a little bit so it's sticking out from the deck just a smidgen. Move the top cards, top half of the deck over so they're beveled over to cover up that card. So now it's sticking out underneath those beveled over cards. Now you're in a position to do an instant center. So let's say they call again. 4 out of 5, you deal a card off the top. 1, 2, 3. On their number, you just reach in with your thumb, and at the same time, your left fingers push a little bit, pushing that card out of the center. 4, 5. Let me show you that again at working speed. This is very, very easy to do. So if you've learned second dealing, you'll pick this little guy up in a heartbeat. There's the ace of clubs in the center of the deck. Take a little break on it. How many hands do you want? 5. Which one do you want it in? 4. Here we go. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's the ace of clubs, exactly what they said. And that's how to bluff a center deal. And you know, after all that work second and bottom dealing, you deserve a bluff every now and then, right? Now I make no secret of the fact that I prefer the push-off second to the strike second. However, some magicians prefer strike second. So for the sake of your toolbox being complete, let's look at a couple of strike seconds for you. We'll have the ace of clubs here on top of the deck. I actually quite like the side strike second as opposed to the top sweep second. And most of the books describe taking a second this way as a strike. I think it's more interesting to take the card from the side this way. I believe Slidini was one of the first ones to advocate this way of dealing seconds. You see, when you're dealing a second this way, you don't get any bad corner over here. There's no bad flash. When you do a top sweep, there's a possibility of flashing here. When you do a side sweep, especially with that little rocking action of the hand, there's no way you can see anything at this edge. And that's the little side sweep second deal. The traditional way to do the second deal, I guess, in the magical world is the top strike second. It's actually my least favorite, but it's here for completeness. It's all about the timing of the deal. As the left hand comes up, that's as you do the deal. So the left hand comes up. It's all about the timing of the deal. It's nothing to do with how big the brief is. The brief, by the way, is the gap between the cards. It's a brief, a break, a gap, a spread, a small monumental valley, a wobbly llama. Okay, the last one was stupid. So it's all about the timing as the hands come together. And that's a top strike second deal. In slow motion, the right thumb comes in. As the card moves out of the way, it's dealt. It's almost like you want to feel this card moving underneath the thumb. It almost hits that card as it's moving out of the way, as you're doing the deal. Little thing from Edward Marlowe on the second deal, the automatic second deal. Involves the Jack of Diamonds. Let's just pop that little puppy onto the table there and a little wiggle of the fingers. Love that magic wiggle, because that's what makes the card change. So how does this guy work? This is quite interesting. You have a break under 2 cards on the deck. You can lift them to show the card. Put them back. Now your first finger is going to curl right inside here onto the face of the deck. So your first finger curls right in and your thumb goes on top of it, holding those 2 cards as one. First finger curled in, thumb on top. Now as the hand turns over, the first finger is going to straighten out, but the thumb's going to keep hold. So what's going to happen is that second card is going to squeeze out just as so. That all happens as the hand turns over. So you're showing the jack, and as you turn the hand, the second card down goes on to the table. And you've done your switch. So one more time for you. There's the cards. As the hand is turning, there's your switch. And coincidentally, just an extra little addition to this for you. It's actually nothing to do with the switch at all. But I published a little thing called Sydney the Hamster, based around this, which is a little fan move, which is where you put your finger into the middle of the deck and do exactly the same move to do a backwards fan. So you would just have the deck in your hand and do a backwards fan from exactly the same action. What you're doing is you're putting your finger in, just as if you were going to do the 2-card change, but with half the deck, and now you fan out the other half of the deck. And that's a little thing I called Sydney the Hamster. It's not particularly brilliant, but it is possibly the only magic trick in history called Sydney the Hamster. And that's what I'm proud of, my friends. Having had a card returned to the deck, you want to control it during a shuffle. Let's look at a couple of ways to do this. First of all, using the jog shuffle. We'll use the Ace of Clubs as the chosen card. We can do a nice little overhand shuffle, just as so. Looks just as though you're mixing up the cards, looks just as though they're messing up, and yet you've kept that Ace of Clubs on top. How do you do it? Let's use again the Ace of Clubs as the card, and let's leave it face up for you. What you're going to do is go into an overhand shuffle. Remember, this card would normally, of course, be face down. You lift off a packet of cards from the back, about 3/4 of the deck, and you're going to in-jog the first little packet you drop. In other words, that's leave it back from the Ace of Clubs. So it's sticking out of the back here. Now you're going to shuffle messily off on top. Looks like a complete mess, but you've still got your little jog here. The right thumb comes in, presses against it, allowing you to take a break right there, and now you shuffle off to your break, bringing the Ace of Clubs back to the top. So with the Ace of Clubs face down, it looks just like you do a messy little shuffle, but magically, you have that Ace of Clubs on top. A pretty little control. Using an overhand shuffle is great because it really looks exactly the way people shuffle cards. But let's say you want to control a card, such as the Ace of Clubs. During that shuffle, all you do is shuffle exactly as anybody else in the normal planet would shuffle, except, of course, with your godlike ability as a magician, you've kept that Ace of Clubs on top. How do you do it? The Ace of Clubs is on top of the deck, a chosen card, if you will. The cards are held face outwards in your hand. Now you're going to go into an overhand shuffle action, but the fingers of your left hand are going to put pressure on the back of that top card. So you're going to hold it in place just as so, as you lift off the cards to shuffle. And you can shuffle as much as you like, so long as you hold that card in place. This is very deceptive. It looks exactly as though you're mixing the deck completely. And yet, wow, there's that Ace of Clubs on top of the deck, exactly where you want it to be. Overhand shuffling is great. Let's look at a way to hold a stack of cards on the bottom of the deck. Let's say your next little miracle involved 3 aces on the bottom of the deck. Here's a couple of ways to hold them into place. First of all, you could just shuffle like this and still have those 3 aces on the bottom of the deck. How do we do that? It's a little bit like the top stock control. The cards are back outwards. See how these fingers are curled over the deck there? I'm not actually going to take cards from the back of the deck. What I'm going to do is take cards from the center of the deck. I'm leaving the entire bottom stock in place. So although it looks like I'm shuffling the cards, somewhat messily and somewhat crazily, mixing everything up, those aces are going to stay exactly where they started, at the bottom of the deck. Another way to control the aces as a bottom stock control is to start shuffling cards from the top of the deck, just as so. Now when you feel in the mood and somewhere in the middle, in-jog a card. That's in-jogging the card and throw the rest of the cards on top. You now have an in-jogged card. All you're going to do is put your right thumb on that card and now this time push downwards, not upwards on it. You pull downwards, take a break, lift, and now shuffle off. There's your aces on the bottom again. So we're shuffling, just as a normal person would do, in jogging, throwing off. Very exaggerated, of course. Let's pull in, lift, and shuffle off. And yet again, we've kept our little bottom stock or card in place. Always nice to know where those chosen cards are, my friends, because then you can use them to do magic. Bear in mind when you're controlling a single card at the top, you can of course use it to control a stock of cards at the top, a little stack if you like. All you have to do is lift from the back, in jog, and shuffle. Lift with the right thumb, shuffle off again. You're actually controlling not just one card, you're actually controlling more than one card. Enough for you to control, say, 10 or 12 cards quite easily on the top of the deck for a top stock control. Of mine. I love this. It's a very casual shuffling action of a deck of cards where you appear to be overhand shuffling the deck, just very casually, exactly as somebody would do, but you're leaving, in this case, the entire deck in the same order. This is great for when you have a full stacked deck. You're just simply giving the deck a little casual overhand shuffle, but the whole deck stays in the same order. So how do you do it? Well, first of all, you drop about a third of the cards, bring your right hand back, drop another third of the cards, but in-jogged. Now come forwards with the right hand and drop the last third or so forward jogged. So now you have a kind of staggered position here in the deck. The right thumb comes in onto the middle packet, the right fingers come over the bottom packet, squeeze, and lifts both packets, just as so. Separating them out, drop this packet, then drop this packet. So we're coming up, back, forwards, highly exaggerated. Lift, pull, drop, drop. This is a very cute little looking shuffle. It looks very casual. It looks just as though you're just casually shuffling the deck of cards, and in fact you're leaving that deck of cards in exactly the same order. How cool is that? So just to show you the shuffle, I've split a deck of cards here into reds and blacks. For example, for Out of This World, maybe, a great little trick. And now I would give the deck a little overhand shuffle. And there it is, still split into reds and blacks. It's a very convincing little false shuffle. Quite delightful. I think it's time for lunch. Oh, man. They didn't pack me anything. I guess it's back to work for this toolbox side me. It's not real brick, by the way. It's just a fake. It's fake. Complete. Look, it's a film set. Look, stop it. Get back to work. More toolbox to go. Now, of course, in these days where Texas Hold'em has become quite crazily popular and card credence has become more commonplace, people tend to riffle shuffle. So if your friends are riffle shufflers, let's look at a way to control cards that way. Let's say, for example, you want to control some cards during a riffle shuffle. And let's say you wanted to control 4 kings. Well, hey, after 2 riffle shuffles, you can control 4 kings. Actually, riffle shuffle controls tend to be a little easier than overhand shuffle controls. You see, let's put those 4 kings on top of the deck, face up. What I'm first of all going to do, I'm going to cut the top half of the deck to the right. And I'm going to cut just a little more to the right than I leave on the left, a little more than half the deck. Now I'm going to start shuffling, but I'm going to shuffle a little faster with my left thumb than I do with my right thumb. That's going to leave some cards on top of that section. In other words, leaving the cards I want where they are. Squeeze up. Now, most card parlance would say you shuffle the deck twice. So this time I cut the top cards to the left. Again, more cards than on the right hand side here. And again, do exactly the same kind of shuffle, this time shuffling faster with my right thumb, leaving those 4 cards on top. So when you do it face down, it looks as though you're giving the deck a couple of very fair shuffles. Except, of course, you're not, because there are your cards in place. Now for your toolbox, of course, there are times when you don't just want cards on top of the deck. There are going to be times when you're going to keep cards on the bottom of the deck. So let's give the deck a couple of riffles this time and have some cards controlled onto the bottom of the deck. In this case, it would be the 1, 2, 3, 4 kings. This is exactly the same as your top stock control, my friends. It's very, very easy to do. So I'm cutting off some cards to the right, leaving a little more to the left. All I'm going to do is, as I go into the riffle shuffle, I'm going to drop a few cards from the left hand and then riffle shuffle up. And I'm going to cut the other way, give another little riffle shuffle. All I'm doing is letting those bottom 4 or 5 or 6 cards fall first to make sure that they stay exactly where I want them to be. Now, for some of the tricks you'll read about in books, and indeed some of the tricks you'll see in my DVDs, you'll need to be able to riffle shuffle a deck of cards and keep some cards on top and at the bottom at the same time. Tough? No, don't panic, my friends. It's nice and easy. Let's have the 2 red kings on top of the deck. Let's have the 2 black kings on the bottom of the deck. Let's give the deck a couple of riffle shuffles. And of course, we've kept those 2 red kings on top and the 2 black kings on the bottom. This is really not difficult. This is all about shuffle management. So let's say we have the 2 blacks on the bottom, 2 reds on the top. Shuffle management. Just remember where your cards are. Let's split the deck into about half and half. We know we need these bottom ones and these top ones. So as we go into the shuffle, we drop a few from the bottom. Now we shuffle a little faster on the right thumb and keep those ones on top. It's just a case of remembering where you want them to be. Let's split them over to the other way, drop a few from here, and make sure you leave a few on top from there. Hey, how good is that? You now have the cards you want on top, you now have the cards you want on bottom, and thanks to your toolbox, you'll be able to do all of those tricks where you need a card kept on the top and the bottom. Full deck false shuffles are quite prized. They're very useful. So let's show you a full deck false riffle shuffle. So we have a deck of cards here, split blacks and reds. And let's give them a little shuffle up. Just as so, little shuffle, little couple of cuts. Look fair, right? No, my friends. That deck is still split into reds and blacks. This is the push-through riffle shuffle. I think it's one of the best of all of the false riffle shuffles. Let's explain it to you. The deck is cut the top half to the right. This is the way I do it anyway, and I cut more to the right and leave less on the left. I'm now going to put a bed down, about 10 or 12 cards from the right-hand cards. Now we're going to shuffle in and leave some of the right-hand cards on top. The cards are genuinely riffled right now. At this point, it's the third fingers that are going to do all the work. As the first and second fingers come over the deck, the third fingers are going to start apparently just squaring in. What's actually going to happen is the third fingers are going to angle the packets against each other. So now this packet's going to start coming through at an angle to the other one. And you push through. Notice how the front fingers are covering everything, but that packet has come all the way through. So now when I square here, it looks as though I've squared up the deck, but in fact I have the shuffled cards right through the other side. I'm now going to use a strip action here. I'm going to hold with my third finger and thumb on this packet, thumb and third finger on this packet, and I'm apparently going to go into my cutting action, but I'm going to strip the cards out. So if I freeze it halfway, what I'm doing is I'm stripping out those cards. They come up to the top of the deck, and I hold a break with my left thumb on them right here. Now I cut about half the cards below that break up to the top. Then I cut to the break to the top, and it looks just like I've shuffled and cut those cards, but they're still in completely the same order. At a working speed, what it looks like is that we actually shuffle the cards together, give them a cut, and a cut. And let me tell you, false shuffles don't come much better than that. And that's the push-through riffle shuffle. Well worth the effort to add to your toolbox. So let's just go through the push-through action again. We'll cut again. Let's make the packets very uneven here so you can see it. In fact, let's turn one packet even face up so you can see it better. So you drop a bed, you shuffle, then drop on top. So we have the packet sandwiched there. The third fingers come in as the first and second fingers are providing shade or cover. So as you push, suddenly the packet's angled. You're just kinking the hand around a little bit. So as the packets push together more, they're starting to go through each other. A little more, And now this packet has come all the way through. Now with those fingers providing cover at the front, we square the cards. And now notice, of course, between your fingers they see a complete deck. They don't really see these cards as sticking out at all. Some people advocate making this gap about an 8/millionth of an inch. I don't see why. That's just them. This is the way I do it. So now we're going to strip these cards forwards, just as so. And that's our first cut. Comes to the top, hold your break. Now you're going to cut and cut to your break, and now the deck is back in exactly the same order it started. The good old push-through shuffle. Gotta love it. There are very few moves that cross over from the magic world to the gambling world. This, however, is one of them. And if there's ever something that qualifies to be equal to the push-through shuffle, in my opinion, it's the Zarro shuffle as a full deck false shuffle. Here we have a deck of cards split into red and black. And what I'm going to do is give these cards a little shuffleette, just as so. And that's it. It's all over, my friends. It's all done. That deck of cards, this is in exactly the same order as we started. This is Herb Zarro, who I have to say is another good buddy of mine. I love him to death. He's a great guy, Herb and Phyllis. Hi, Phyllis, how you doing? Give her a little mention there. This is his beautiful invention that's actually moved way over into the gambling world. Here's how it's done. There's actually a number of ways you can do it, but this is the magic-y way of doing it. You lift up about half the deck. Now you're going to do a slip cut of the top card. So your left first finger is on the card. You're going to pull out the cards underneath that card. So just as so. So this is the original top card of the deck. Now you're going to shuffle the cards together, but it's slightly precise, not too precise, but slightly precise. You want to drop some cards from the left hand first, then shuffle together with the right hand, and hold back just one card with the left hand and drop that down. Just one card. Now your fingers are going to push forward slightly on those top two cards as you twist the deck to put it back together, to push it back together, if you will. As you do that, you'll find the cards separate. They're stripped out. See what we have now? They're stripped out. All I'm going to do now is lift with the right hand a little to push those cards back in. So if you can see what I'm doing, I'm actually just pushing the two halves back into each other, just as so. So for the Zarro shuffle in action, it's we shuffle, push, and squeeze. Shuffle, push, squeeze. And the deck is in exactly the same order. Okay, everybody likes to look fancy with playing cards, I guess. So you'll find your friends will be doing these kind of shuffles, you know, where they'll shuffle the cards as so, trying to make themselves look very cool. What's great about this is a great way to control cards, of course, as well. Let's take a chosen card. Well, let's take the Ace of Diamonds. There's a pretty cool chosen card. Let's have it on top of the deck. Let's give it a little shuffle. Hey, I bet you remembered that from earlier on, right? Now let's give it a little in-hand shuffle and a little waterfall-y action. Everybody thinks you're the fancy pants card sleight of hand guy, and you are, because you've still got that Ace of Diamonds controlled. This is easy peasy pudding and pie. All you've done, let's leave the Ace of Diamonds face up, all you've done is held it in place, as we did before with overhand shuffle action. So now we can shuffle away like a madman and still have it there. And now when you do your in-hands riffle shuffle, you just let it drop last of all. To do an in-hands riffle shuffle, the first finger curls in on the face of the deck. Thumb at the back, fingers here. So now you've got a kind of flex point on the cards. Flex or riffle some of the cards into your other hand, onto the fingers to make it look smooth. Now lift with the right fingers upwards, putting them into exactly the same position in the left hand. So now you have two halves of the deck held identically. Now all you have to do is keep these fingers curled underneath and riffle them off. And to do the little waterfall action at the end, all you have to do is bow the cards against each other and let them spring down. No big shakes, but now you're not just shuffling the cards, you're controlling one too. Along your magical journey, you're going to come across a somewhat esoteric little sleight called the Pharaoh Shuffle. At first sight, it's going to be quite daunting, but it's actually much easier to do than you'd think. The actual Pharaoh Shuffle itself consists of meshing a deck of cards together so that each and every card alternates correctly. Now, don't worry, you don't have to do a 26 and 26 Pharaoh like I just did there, because most Pharaoh tricks just rely on a partial Pharaoh. But here's the technique for Pharaohs. And I use actually Edward Marlowe's technique. It's the table shelf technique, if you will. The deck is held in the left hand. The left first finger is curled underneath. 3 fingers on this side, thumb on this side, because it would be kind of stupid to have the thumb on that side as well, I guess. Now we're going to cut off about half the cards. So if you're going to go for a 26 and 26, that's just practice, but that's okay. Notice how I'm lifting them up. First finger at the front, 2 fingers at the side, little fingers pressing on the top there. So it's actually holding it in a kind of bridge position. So now I can butt the 2 packets together. So now I'm going to go here with my little finger. See how that little finger's kind of just right on the join of the cards? And I'm going to squeeze, and this really is a feel thing. I'm going to squeeze those 2 packets together, and if you do it just right, it looks exactly like that. A perfect Pharaoh Shuffle. Now there are 2 kinds of Pharaoh Shuffles, and you're going to use both of them if you get into Pharaoh magic. One is the in Pharaoh, and that's where the original top card of the deck goes second from the top of the deck. And then there's the out Pharaoh, just so you know what it is, where the original top card of the deck stays on top of the deck. This is all just a feel and practice thing, but trust me, if you learn to do Pharaohs well, then you'll have some amazing magic. Harry Reiser has published beautiful things. Ed Marlowe's Estimation Aces is probably one of the greatest tricks I love to do all the time, and there's a whole slew more. Learning to do a Pharaoh simply by mixing those cards perfectly together is something that will open up a whole new magical world for you. And in fact, I'll tell you, interestingly enough, most of the Pharaoh tricks that require full deck Pharaohs, such as, for example, Paul Gertner's Unshuffled, normally you get a little glimpse at the card you need to cut to. So don't panic, my friends. You don't have to be tremulous. There's always outs built in. Pharaoh shuffling, well worth learning. Give it a bash. So we have a little deck of cards split into reds and blacks. Another little false shuffleette for you, if you will. Little thing I've come up with years ago. I love this little puppy. It's This is exactly how guys in English public houses or bars would shuffle cards. They just kind of force them into each other like that. Lovely. Looks like the deck's mixed up. Oh, no, no, no. Au contraire, mon ami. It's exactly in the same order it started. So how's this little guy done? I call this the wedge shuffle, and it's a total bluff. What you're doing is you're cutting about half the deck from behind. You're pushing up with your thumb on the top card of the left-hand side. So you're pulling up from the back, push up, so now you can lean against it. So you're chipping out that card. Now you're going to shuffle in, but you're going to back jog them slightly. So it looks like you're shuffling in, but actually you're just pushing them in on top of the cards that were already there. Your right thumb comes in, lifts up everything, again push up that top card, and now you can do the same action. From the side, of course, it's very apparent, but from this side, it looks as though you're forcing the cards in against each other. At the end of the day, well, that's a false shuffle. That's called a block and a wedge. I'll just show it to you again very quickly. So we're lifting up, we're shuffly, 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 shuffly. Yeah, let's give him another little shuffle, 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 shuffle. Very casual, very deliberate, and yet perfect for you. Goodness me, how many more false shuffles do you need? But let's do another. So we have a deck of cards split into red and black. Let's do a little riffleette. Squish them together. And that looks like a riffle shuffle deck of cards. But it's not. The deck is in exactly the same order. This is the popover riffle shuffle. It's not one they really want to be burning with their eyes. It's one you want to do casually, but it's quite cute. So the deck is set in your order. Let's cut some to the right. And now we're going to shuffle, but you really want to shuffle not deep, just corners. Just tiny, teeny, weeny little corners like that. So it's just as if they're going together. Your hands are now going to come over to apparently squidge the packets together, but as they do so, what's going to happen is your right hand's going to lift and your left hand's going to twist slightly away. So your left hand twists slightly away, clearing the packets as your right hand lifts, and what that's going to do is put one packet on top of the other packet. Now you apparently just square the cards together, and that would be the deck, of course, in exactly the same order. So the packets are split. We just do the corners, just those little corners. The left hand twists out as the right hand comes over the top. Do you see how deceptive that looks? And now it looks just as though you're squeezing the packets together. And that's